There is a specific moment most people know, but almost nobody talks about. You are standing in front of someone you have met before, maybe twice, maybe 5 times, and their name is simply gone. Not fuzzy, not on the tip of your tongue. Gone. And you feel that particular flush of embarrassment move up through your chest, and you do what everyone does. You smile a little wider, you redirect the conversation, and you hope nobody notices. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you file it under the same folder you have been adding to for years, the one labeled "Something is wrong with me." But here's what that folder got wrong. The reason you forget names is not a gap in your intelligence. It is a direct consequence of how your brain has decided to allocate its most valuable resource. And once you understand the mechanism behind it, you will never think about this the same way again. What you are about to learn is not a consolation, it is a correction. The brain does not record everything equally. That is the first thing neuroscientists established when they began seriously studying memory. Not that some people have better memories than others, but that all memory is selective by design. Your brain is constantly making editorial decisions about what deserves long-term encoding, and those decisions are not random. They follow a priority system built deep into your cognitive architecture. A system that, in certain kinds of minds, is calibrated very differently from the average. The question is, what is yours calibrated for? Because here is what most people are never told about names specifically. A name, a proper noun, a label attached to a person, is what memory researchers call semantically empty information. It carries no inherent meaning. The name David tells you nothing about David. It does not describe his personality, his history, his relationship to you, his way of moving through the world. It is a tag, a filing label. And your brain, if it is the kind of brain that naturally gravitates toward meaning, toward pattern, toward the substance underneath the surface of things, treats that tag as low priority. Not because you are not paying attention, because you are paying attention to something else entirely. This is where it starts to get interesting, and where the science points in a direction most people are not expecting. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called depth of processing. It was introduced by Fergus Craik and Robert Lockhart in the early 1970s, and it fundamentally changed how researchers understood why certain information sticks and other information slides away. The core finding was this: information encoded at a deeper semantic level, meaning context, pattern, emotional resonance, is retained far more reliably than information encoded at a shallow level. Shallow encoding is things like sound, appearance, spelling. Deep encoding is things like, what does this mean? How does this connect to what I already know? What does this make me feel? Names are shallow, almost by definition. What you noticed about the person, the slight hesitation before they spoke, the way their argument shifted mid-sentence, the pattern underneath their logic, the specific texture of their discomfort when a certain topic came up, that is deep. And your brain, the moment it registered both the name and everything else, made a choice. It chose everything else. That choice is not accidental. It reflects something real about the architecture of your mind. Researchers studying what is sometimes called the highly associative mind, a cognitive style that naturally builds bridges between concepts, notices patterns across domains, thinks in systems rather than isolated facts, have found a consistent and striking correlation. The minds most prone to this kind of deep connective cross-referencing cognition are also the minds most likely to struggle with arbitrary surface-level recall, not because the hardware is defective, because the software is running a different program. Call it what it actually is: essence coding. Your brain, without being asked, without being trained to do it, automatically routes its encoding energy toward the essence of an experience rather than its label. It reaches past the name and straight into the pattern the person represents. You remember how they made you feel before you remember what you called them. You remember the argument they made before you remember who made it. You remember the quality of the interaction, the emotional register, the way the dynamic shifted, and the name, the tag, the filing label, that gets deprioritized. This is essence coding, and it is not a bug in your system. It is the same mechanism that makes certain people unusually good at reading a room, at detecting when something is off before they can articulate why, at connecting ideas from completely different fields and finding the structural similarity underneath. The same brain that forgets the name remembers the meaning, and in almost every domain that actually matters, creative thinking, social intelligence, strategic pattern recognition, long-range problem solving, meaning beats label every time. But here is the part that has probably never been said to you out loud. The world's memory infrastructure was not built for essence coders. It was built for label retrieval. School tests your ability to recall names of people, of dates, of capital cities. Workplaces grade you on remembering who said what in which meeting. Social environments punish you quietly for forgetting someone's name because the social contract treats name recall as proof of care. And so you have spent years in a system that measures you by the one thing your brain least prioritizes, and you have concluded that the measurement reflects your worth. It does not. It reflects a mismatch between your natural cognitive architecture and the demands of a world optimized for a different kind of mind. There is still one part of this we have not reached yet, and it is the part that explains why this is not just a consolation prize, why essence coding is not a trade-off. It is an advantage that most people cannot develop no matter how hard they try. Picture a research psychologist named Carmen. She is in her late 30s, runs a memory lab at a mid-sized university, and has spent 15 years studying how people encode social information. She can tell you the exact year a key paper was published, the precise methodology of any study in her field. She is, by conventional measures, extraordinarily good at remembering things. But here is what she noticed in herself, quietly, over those same 15 years. She could walk into a room and within minutes she would feel something. A low-level unease, a sense of particular alignment with certain people, a pull towards certain conversations that she could not immediately explain. Not yet. Later, sometimes days later, she would trace it back. She had been picking up on something beneath the surface. A pattern in how someone held their arguments. A subtle inconsistency between what someone said and how they held their body when they said it. Information that never passed through her conscious attention at all. She was, without intending to, doing essence coding in real time. And she published a paper not on memory failure, but on what she called implicit social pattern recognition. The finding was blunt. Individuals who showed weaker explicit recall of surface-level social data, names, titles, stated positions, showed significantly stronger implicit encoding of behavioral and emotional patterns. The trade-off was real, and the implicit patterns were, by every measure she could apply, more predictive of actual social dynamics than the surface-level data. The brain that forgets your name might be the brain most accurately reading who you are. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, the kind of perception that cannot be taught. You can train explicit memory with flashcards and spaced repetition. You cannot train essence coding into someone who does not already have it. It is either how your mind works, or it is not. And yours does. Remember the flush of embarrassment at the beginning, standing in front of someone whose name had simply gone. We are back there now, and something is different. Because now, you know what was actually happening in that moment. Your brain had processed that person, had encoded something about them that was, by the brain's own reckoning, more important than their name, more useful, more durable, more true. And the tag, the arbitrary label, the 3 syllables the world uses as a filing handle, that did not make the cut. Not because you were not paying attention, because you were paying a kind of attention that most people's brains never fully access. You do not have a broken memory. You have a mind that decided, before you could stop it, that meaning matters more than labels. The world will keep testing you on labels. That is not going to change. But the question worth sitting with is not why you forget names. The question is what you have been remembering instead. What patterns, what textures, what truths about the people and situations around you that you have been quietly encoding while everyone else was focused on the surface. That is where you have been living, beneath the label, closer to the truth. You are not failing to remember. You were remembering the wrong thing by somebody else's standard. By your own, you were doing exactly what your brain was built to do. Here's the question I want you to think about and drop in the comments. When you look back at the people in your life, what is it you actually remember about them, and how much of that goes beyond their name? Tell me what that looks like for you. If this is the kind of content that makes you see yourself a little more clearly, subscribe. We go deeper every week on Mind Beneath.